Welcome to Owen and Brew's Barbecue. Today we are serving up a giant rack of crate dragon ribs. My name's Matt, and I'm joined by who I think is a dragon expert. Nick.
Yeah, maybe Game of Thrones, maybe.
Oh yeah, there's a little bit of crossover there, right?
We could be eating on those ribs for a very long time.
So long. I don't think there's a deep freezer large enough to contain all of that meat.
At the very end of the episode, I assumed that's what was on the back of the speeder, was just a big giant cube of meat.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I was like, wow. I was like, that's just like one little thing, but still, it's a huge chunk of meat.
I assume that he's taking that back to Pelly or something like that. Hey, thanks for helping me work on my ship. Here's some meat.
That actually does make sense. Yeah, a little bit of like a barter, because he never has much money, so it's like, hey, here's 20 pounds of crate dragon.
This will keep you fed until I come back here next season.
Right.
So I like how we jumped to the end,
just automatically. Yeah.
I'm glad you bring it up, meat. Well, today we're talking about Chapter 9 of The Mandalorian. It's called The Marshal. The Marshal. And we're gonna get spoilery. We're gonna try to hit every single Easter egg, but I don't know if we possibly can with this supersized episode.
I don't know about Easter eggs. There definitely were some pearls in this episode, though, that's for sure.
I like that. That's good. Yeah, I mean, even as I was writing notes, and Nick and I were talking about this before the show, it's just like I feel like I have 5 different papers going of there's this. So, right off the bat, Nick, what's your take on this episode? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it?
No, I was just overall, I really liked it. It was entertaining. It was really back to the space Western theme and a lot of elements that we'll get into more as we talk about it. The only thing I kind of had a little bit of issue with it was that I felt that some elements were kind of a retelling of episodes of chapters 1 and 2. Namely in that, you have the early cantina scene as you did episode 1. You have the going to the pit to slay something instead of the Mudhorn. Now it's the crate dragon. And then I have another point too.
I definitely did think about the Mudhorn.
Yeah.
That popped into my mind. I feel like wherever we're going, if we're having a space Western, there's got to be a cantina somewhere.
Right. True.
It just feels kind of par for the course. Like every Western has a saloon, so, or at least, but, that being said, definitely as they approached that cave, this is crate dragon, or not crate dragon. This is Mudhorn 2.0.
Exactly. That's what I felt, and then even at the end with the reveal, which we don't have to really get into in detail right now, but it was like, whereas you had Baby Yoda, the surprise with what is this? Now you have this surprise as well at the end of this one, which I didn't feel as quite had the impact as the Baby Yoda, because Baby Yoda is just so cute. Aww. But it was just like, oh, I see what they're doing here. But it, so it kind of mirrored in a way the first 2 episodes I felt of chapter 1 and 2.
A solid episode though. We got
great episode.
50 minutes and the pacing of it, and I felt like the tapestry it wove, it's like we got a little bit of everything, and if you were missing some Baby Yoda memes, I mean, I feel like him flying on that speeder bike.
That was so great.
Right?
I mean, I think that's where it is. Just the facial expressions of what they do with Baby Yoda is so good, because he's just sitting there in the bag, like he's enjoying life. Just like, hey, you could almost it's like that Nick Cage meme, and Con Air when he gets his head out and the hair's flowing. That's what I see in Baby Yoda, just like, I'm enjoying life on this scooter. Like, yeah, man. And then you kind of see other things too, like when when they're around the barbecue, and the dog, the Sand People dog is looking at him, licking. He doesn't quite show fear, but he's kind of like, I don't know if I like you or not. But it was good. Just a full meal.
So let's kind of dig into this, and I know that we have notes that go all over the place, and we'll probably talk about some aspects. I want to just touch base on real quick. If you listen to the episode prior to this, where we made our predictions, we were not spoiled on anything. I don't look at any spoilers. I didn't know that Timothy Oliphant would appear in Boba Fett's outfit. I had no clue that was going to happen whatsoever. So that was just a Jack would be like toting this around like, I won.
Look at me. Yeah. I can't believe I should be on Owen and Bruce.
Yeah. But I also mentioned, I said like somebody like Jodo Cast appearing, like somebody like psyching us out, like, that there would be like somebody in the Boba Fett armor that's not Boba Fett, and that only Star Wars fans would be like, oh. I wanted to mention Fen Shisa, I think is his name. I had to do some digging into my old school Marvel comics. This is issue number 68, very popular issue of the original Marvel run here, because it's got what appears to be Boba Fett on the cover. And I'm holding this up while Nick is just ignoring me, but that's okay.
No, I'm listening 100%. I guess when I wrote down that name as well somewhere. I'm like,
oh, okay.
Go ahead, yeah.
So Nick, if you can look at the screen here. So this is the issue that I'm talking about. It even has Legos on the back.
Oh, cool.
But this is issue number 68. Came out in February of 1983. It dives into basically the first references of Mandalore and Mandalorians occurs in this actual issue. Of course, they didn't know what was going to happen at all. But it sets up a story where Princess Leia is searching for Boba Fett, comes across someone who looks to be Boba Fett. She saves him because she sees that this guy, who she thinks is Boba Fett, is shooting a slaver. And so she's anti-slavery, so she protects him, and realizes like he's not Boba Fett, that he's this Fen Shisa guy, and who used to be with Boba Fett, and there's a whole other backstory. It's kind of boring, but maybe a high point for some of the Star Wars Marvel runs, and the fact that they did provide some expanded stories for in a time period where we didn't have much Star Wars, and now we're at this point where we can just roll in all of the wonderful things that they're putting together. I know we're going to get to this episode, but one other thing I wanted to point out though, Nick, and we talked about it a lot, and how we're so frustrated with the Rise of Skywalker specifically. And in general, the larger picture of the sequel trilogy, and the fact that it didn't play with the sandbox that was already there. It wanted to make its own sandbox while riffing off of everything Star Wars. You know what I mean? It like riffed off of the original trilogy, but as far as like playing with all of the other expanded universe things, it really just kind of was like, whatever, it could care less. And I feel like this episode, and we felt this way about The Mandalorian in general, but this episode specifically highlights how you can have a character who's a no-name, or somebody that like, or some little trivial things that exist in a video game somewhere that appear and become relevant, and you can have both new and old Star Wars fans go, that's so cool. And it unites us all in a way that we're like loving it.
Well, I think, it's kind of like with the Cobra Kai that now Netflix is doing. The same as with The Mandalorian. Like both of these shows are homages, but also a continuance of a story we all love. And when they reference something from the past, it's usually very subtle. Like you either get it or you don't get it, but it doesn't like make you focus that on the scene. It's like, oh, that's cool. Like look at that little thing on the wall over there. That's cool. Or it's just some random word that they used, and you're like, oh, but it doesn't take away from the scene. Like the way I felt, some of the things in the sequel trilogy did, where it's like, oh yeah, here's a throwback to the old trilogy. And you're like, well, you don't have to beat me over the head with it. Just kind of like if you
exactly. And you're right. Subtle. There's a difference between beating you over the head with a club and like subtly putting in something that, again, old Star Wars fans can be like, oh, that's cool. Like I said,
it's like even something like just the quick scene when he's given the flashback story, when you see the Death Star 2 blow up. It's very subtle in a way that like it showed the bigger universe, and that like, hey, we were all experiencing this together, even though we're in this little hole in the ground. but it also shows the importance of the original trilogy. Like it's like, Luke's and Leia's and Han, all the things they did were important. It did filter out. And so it's like, but they didn't get into it. They just showed that little clip and like, that was it. And you're like, hey, that's cool. Like, it's just like, it just shows from their point of view, the impact of the bigger story.
And that the Urabesh that's spinning around at the very bottom of the news ticker, it says, I'd seen online where it says something from the original Return of the Jedi crawl, where it says a new Death Star more powerful than the first.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So they basically just took that part of the scroll, the words going back into space at the beginning of Return of the Jedi and put that on the Urabesh. I don't have a direct translation for you.
The only thing I translated was at the very beginning of the episode when he's walking down the alley.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that graffiti. On the wall.
There's a lot of it, and a lot of it I didn't waste my time on because it's so hard to see. I was like, I'm not gonna. But there was one right at the very first time you see it on the right side. Yeah. I thought it was funny because it says Kilroy. So anyone who knows your graffiti history, Kilroy was like the very first thing ever back in World War II. The people would just like, Kilroy was here, Yep. So I thought that was kind of funny that they wrote Kilroy was here on the wall.
And it's just a little doodle of a guy like peeking over a wall.
Over a wall, yeah. I was like, that's funny. Yeah.
I think we both know each other basically a la through Lost, and one of the things that I think we may have mentioned was we just wanted like a wall that comes down the map, like John Locke sees in Lost, where we can like kind of look at all of these things. And I felt like that graffiti moment at the beginning of this episode. I mean, like I could see there's a snow trooper with a helmet crossed out. There's like a C-3PO looking thing. Yeah. There's a Watto up on one.
He's on the door to the fight. The Watto is. And then you also have like, it's not Darth Vader, but you have like a weird helmet, but you have the rectangular mask, but it's not quite Darth Vader. But yeah. Yep.
No, there's a lot of cool little treats in there. So the episode begins with a scene that we saw in the trailer of the Mandalorian walking out of the shadows with Baby Yoda through this darkened alleyway area, and we also see these red eyes pop up. We never really see what kind of creatures those are.
Right. I assumed they were dogs, but you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also kind of felt it was neat, even though it's not like, it's kind of like the Jawas in A New Hope. You see the yellow eyes, whereas this time you see the red eyes, but for a very different purpose.
Yeah. So the Mandalorian is going to the fight, right? To meet Gor Koresh, who is played by John Leguizamo. And how cool is it that we can get some high quality character actors to come in for just like someone who's going to die?
I think it's because everybody wants to be a part of Star Wars. Every actor wants to be a part. I would in a heartbeat. Yeah. It's like, oh, you want me just for a one line cameo? Cool. I'm there. I'll do it for free. It's like, let's do it. But I mean, I was more excited just that we saw an Asbin, I never said it right. Asbinson.
Oh yeah, Abyssian. Yeah, because we've only really seen one just in the cantina scene from A New Hope. We don't see them that often. So I was like, cool. That's right. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because it's a definite callback to that. So yeah, Gor Koresh is an Abyssian. So from Biss, because we're Earthians from Earth. I love the. This whole opening sequence of the fight, we got, I mean, basically, a lot of the tidbits of this fight sequence already in the trailer, but still was really cool to see it fully play out. And one of the cool things that I loved when the fight does go down, you see the Gamorrean in the background who's like basically like running around like, I don't know what I should do.
Right.
I mean, like he's, the fight's going on and Gor Koresh breaks the fight by killing the opponent that's going to kill his own Gamorrean guard.
Right.
I kept thinking Baby Yoda was going to interfere somehow or like make this fight go a different way or like, there might have been some Qui-Gon Jinn kind of like reference where the Mandalorian was going to gamble, and then Baby Yoda like does his little magic hand thing. I'm glad they didn't go there, and that the Mandalorian was like, he had his own creed about like, he doesn't gamble.
Unless he has to, yeah. I thought it was interesting because it was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for the Mandalorian, because if he did take the bet, he was going to shoot him anyway. He was going to make sure he won regardless. And so it was like, and so he just basically showed him his cards at that point. It's like, oh, and then just shot him anyway. It's like, wow. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I did feel like, because we had talked about it on the previous episode, I wish they hadn't shown us the Baby Yoda, closing the hatch thing in the teasers, because like that was a really funny moment that I felt was like, oh, I already know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I was like, but I would have got a good chuckle out of that if I had seen it before.
Yeah, I mean and I think you and I both had kind of suspected that a lot of the stuff that we'd see in the trailer was going to be more from the first 3 episodes.
Yeah.
So maybe some teasers for stuff that happens later, but I do feel that like we're getting kind of, the bulk of it. So another cool thing, the axes that they're using, I thought those were vibro blades, and that we were seeing like that shock or that like, but I've also read other things that the Mandalorian's knife that he uses was a vibro blade.
Oh,
so, but I thought the axes that the Gamorreans were using were actual vibro blades, because we've heard that term. It's been used a lot in like early Star Wars canon, but basically like all of the knives and spikes that you see on Jabba's palace guards, and that's like, they're vibro blades. What does that mean?
right.
I guess it's just the fact that the blade vibrates enough that it like penetrates or like helps the cut happen like a lot deeper or a lot more like. So whether or not the axes were vibro blades or not, it was a really cool effect to show us something that was not a lightsaber, but still had some kind of cool sci-fi aspect, So, so yeah, the action scene, basically he doesn't let that Gore Crush go. He tracks him down, strings him up, gets his information.
Yeah. And well, this is you already knew it was going to happen when he said, I promise you won't die by my hand. I'm like, it's a setup, dude. Don't tell him anything. Don't tell him anything. It's like, you fell for it, dude. Yeah. And,
no human can take off this mask.
right.
I'm not a human. I'm a robot.
Right.
Sorry.
Exactly. Like so many times have we seen that same kind of thing where it's like, yeah, well, don't worry. It's not going to be,
Yeah. But hey,
words.
Star Wars is for everybody. And if that worked for some kid to understand, like, don't trust someone that says you won't die by my hands.
Yeah. The one thing that was weird about this scene, I don't know if you looked this up either, because he says when he tells him that there's a Mando on Tatooine, we'd already seen that. Like, he's like, oh, I've been to Tatooine. There's no Mandalorian there. And he says, I swear it by the Gatra.
Oh, okay.
And that's which was I don't know if it was just a mistake in the writing or if maybe they're going to use it for a new meaning or something. But the only thing we've ever seen from this, kind of like what you're saying when you looked up the thing about the Mandalorian from the old comic books, is that it's a droid's right group. So it doesn't really make sense. Like, for like, I swear by a droid's right group. It's like, okay,
yeah, and you're not a droid, so yeah, that's interesting. That's a good deep cut there, man.
Well, it's mentioned in the Tarkin novel.
So okay.
So I was like, okay, it's like, so that doesn't make sense, but okay. And that's the only like true era, I think, in the episode where it's like, oh, did they mean to do that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, he mentions this Mandalorian on Tatooine, and at this point, I'm thinking, does he know that he's dead? Like how does he know that Boba Fett's still alive? And that's what I'm immediately thinking of.
He might not know it's Boba Fett, but like what I gathered, from when they first are sitting down and talking, is that he is not interested. He's trying to locate Mandalorians just to get the armor, and that's it. So he might have heard, that there was a Mandalorian there, or maybe maybe you're right. Maybe it went back all the way to Boba Fett, and it was like, oh, I knew this guy. He helped me do some jobs or something,
Yeah,
he was a bounty hunter.
Yeah, I like your thought though too. That if he's looking for Beskar, he might have gotten a rumor that there's especially because you get this Red Key mining guild that takes over that city. You could have one of them that escaped that runs off, and joins some other crime syndicate,
Absolutely.
So, so anyway, Gor Koresh dies. Cut to Mandalorian's show title, and we get the chapter title, The Marshal, which basically should have told us that Timothy Oliphant was going to be in this episode, right? Because he's a U.S. Marshal.
Talk about typecasting. How many times has he been a marshal or a sheriff? Like now, it's like 4 different roles. I mean, he does it good, but
it worked. And we are jumping the gun though, getting to that point, but it doesn't matter. We're all over the place. Mando goes to Tatooine, so we get that return to Tatooine right at the beginning of this, and Peli, we get her again, right?
Yeah. What are the odds of him landing in the same hangar bay? But
well, yeah, that's true. I mean, they have a spaceport. But he could have requested it.
True.
Now that he knows that who she is, and he can trust her with Baby Yoda. So I like that we get her again. I always kind of thought she would appear again in season 1, and so the fact that she's right here at the beginning of season 2 makes sense. And it shows, this episode as we get into it, it shows the character changes that he's gone through. The fact that he's okay with droids now, and that makes for a very funny throwaway line from Peli. But I liked what she said about if this thing ever divides or buds,
right?
Which I thought was really hilarious, and maybe a clue as to how they do.
It's true. We don't know. Yeah,
we have. I mean, that could be like a. I don't know. I mean, we don't know. I mean, they're green, so
There's a lot of things I noticed about in this scene. Like the first one is that you see her when she's landing. She's working on what looks to be like a pod racer engine, but it never zooms out enough to where you can see the full thing.
Okay,
but it looks like Sebulba's engine from
that's interesting.
1. It looks like exactly like that kind of engine. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I mean, there's like what we said, there's a lot of little Easter eggs in this episode, and even in this hangar base scene, we see a couple of them.
And references to episode 1 and episode 4. Both beginnings of 2 trilogies. So, go ahead.
So, there's a lot of interesting things like that I was just. Because I've watched this episode 3 times, and like her, it's the only time that you can really see a lineage of what's going to go to eventually be the sequel trilogy. And that when he pulls out Baby Yoda, she says, "Thank the Force," and she says it in such a way that's like, just like C.T. Bruce saying, "Thank the Maker," it's like it's almost like they're legendary now. Like they just say it out of habit, but not true believers in it. And this is kind of reinforced, prior by the Mandalorian saying like his kind knows how to move things with his mind, but they don't refer to it as the Force, even though they say the word Force. Like they don't
make the connection. Yeah,
they don't make the connection.
Yeah, I mean they always say religion is 1 generation away from extinction.
Right.
And so you have this removal of knowledge, or and people are broken apart by space and planets, and so. So, no. Do you have any more?
Well, I was going to make a little bit of a dirty joke, but I know we're kind of PG. But like, because she goes like, she volunteers to babysit Baby Yoda while he goes.
I know what you're talking.
Yeah, she volunteers to go. She's like, "Baby, I've seen them all shapes and sizes," and I'm going like, "Okay." Yeah.
I think that's a testament as to how Amy Sedaris delivers that line.
Yeah. Exactly.
Another person would have delivered that line in a different manner that might not have alluded to the fact that she's been around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what
I picked up on that too, and it's subtle enough that I think younger ones are just like, what? Okay.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But it works for getting that point across.
Yeah, my favorite probably part of this episode though is we see R5, and he still has. I like how they make the same joke but it's a different way of making the joke, and that he's so slow. So you're saying he has motivation problems? Like, I was like, that's a really clever way of saying like he has a bad motivator.
Yeah. And you see the burnt little.
You do.
I mean, that's some very knowledgeable in world building there. I also wrote down here in my notes, Nick wanted a map, and we got one. Except it wasn't of the galaxy. Like, you wanted a map of the galaxy to see like what parts were controlled by who, and
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
but we do get a map of Tatooine, which is pretty cool.
Which is pretty neat. Yeah, it was very basic topology, but like she's like, oh, like here's these 2 cities, and here's one over here, and you're like, you saying that Tatooine only has 3 cities? Like,
well, I mean, they definitely like only showed parts of it, so I feel like we didn't get the full globe. So I don't know which part that the Atreides are living on, but it's like there's clearly some references to Dune that happen later in this episode.
Well, absolutely. So, or Tremors, however you
want.
Or Tremors, yeah, or however you want to look at it.
So yeah, we get Archive D4, and then we learn about Mos Pelgo, which was an old mining colony.
This was mentioned in, well, we were saying earlier, this is mentioned in the book Aftermath.
Yes.
This town.
And so I've read Aftermath trilogy. I read it when it came out, like each book. And the only thing that I can say, because I feel really bad for not remembering this, is that when we learn Cobb Vanth's name, Cobb Vanth, when we learn his name, I was like, I know that name. like it was like an immediate, like, I know that, and I don't know where, but I knew that it was someone that had been in the Star Wars universe. And that just goes to the testament of like this world building, like the further pulling out a character that's in a book that's already part of canon. So I apologize to listeners. I can't tell you exactly what happens to his character in the trilogy. Sadly, we're missing Chris, who has more recently, read the book. So, and the, so I apologize. It's been probably 5 years since I've
It's funny how like when you go through something like that and you think you have the whole story and you're like, oh wow, I did read that, but I don't remember. It's just, you feel bad. Like, where did it go?
Yeah. I mean, I think also too, like when you do read books, we've actually talked about this off air, but it's like, there's certain moments that I think like kind of resonate or stick with you more, or stand out more. I mean, there's a scene that happens in the second book. And so minor spoilers for those books, but the second book has more Han Solo in it. And when he appears, it's like a really cool moment. And it's like, it stands out to my mind. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when that happens. Or there's a whole aspect that happens on Kashyyyk. And I actually enjoyed the second book, Life Debt, probably more than the other two, just because it had more Han and Chewie, and it's like, I mean, that's always my jam.
I mean, not to get too far off of the episode, but it's the same thing. Like, I love the opening of Aftermath because you have the Wedge Antilles little part there, and then you kind of go into this other stuff. I'm like, okay, now you're losing me, because it's just like you want the familiar characters or someone you can at least visualize in your head, like what's going on.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's some other fun aspects to the book. Of course, like Mr. Bones is a really cool character that is introduced, which is an old battle droid, B1 battle droid. All right. So, what were you going to say?
I was just going to go where you were going. So we get the speeder bike.
I'm going to the speeder bike, and what I already mentioned, maybe the most memeable moment is Baby Yoda as he's flying. We see them stop and talk with some Tuskens, and we actually even see a better Womp Rat.
Yeah, we see lots of Womp Rats, which I was happy. I wondered if people understood what they were, because like we hadn't really, we've seen them scurry, but we never actually seen them in detail like this. There's actually a couple things I liked about this episode. Like, we actually got to see a really good facial shot of the Banthas, which we don't normally see. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. You can actually see their eyes and their teeth and their face.
And we see a new use for the Gaffy stick.
It's
actually cleaning the teeth of the Bantha, which shows a couple things, like, a universal tool that they probably use for a lot of different things, but that they're taking care of their animals, that they are, and I think that they've, both this episode and the other Tatooine episode, they've really set up the Tusken Raiders as stand-in for Native Americans.
Yeah, I have that written down, like on the next page here, about like how this one really. I mean, I know that Lucas had never really said it, but that's always what they were meant to be. Like it's a space western. They were the Native Americans. Everyone else is more the cowboys. And this episode really hammers it in many situations of like, wow, they are the Native Americans of this planet. Like it's. But we can get to that in a second. But
sure, yeah.
It was one of the things that always bothered me. Like I think I mentioned it last season too. Is like we never have learned how the Mandalorian learns how to speak the Sand People's language. It's one of the things that kind of just irks me a little bit. Is like because we've never heard anyone else speak it. So we're like, well, how does he know how to speak it?
I did wonder about that as well, and we also get an allusion at some point from Mando earlier in the episode where he says, I've spent a lot of time on Tatooine and I've never. And I'm like, wait, you've only spent this much time. Is there another time before that in which he has actually been on Tatooine? Mm-hmm. Like in the past, is there some other time that he spent on Tatooine?
Right. We might see it. You never know. But.
It could be an interesting cross connection with Kenobi.
True. But yeah.
I mean, he could be a child, basically.
Right, he would be. Well,
he would be on Tatooine, and that would be an interesting way that he would actually learn Tusken. Because you're right. How does he know Tusken? Much in the same way that it's like, how do I know that there's a commercial break coming up? So it's like I just feel the Force. So, now that we're back from that commercial break, though.
We saw the Womp Rats, and then we see immediately things that we're really familiar with. We see, moisture evaporators and the very stereotypical dome top buildings.
Oh yeah, as he's rolling into Mos Pelgo,
like a
BA. He's just slow roll.
I love this though, because like to me, of all the stereotypical Western scenes in Western movies, this is it. The slow, even though he's on a speeder bike, it's the slow horse into town, the one lane town with every single town folk on their porch just looking at him. The only thing I didn't see was someone with a big thing of chewing tobacco in just spit on the ground as he walks by. That would have made it perfect of like the typical Western, But it was just there. And then what's he do? He stops right at the cantina. He doesn't really tie up his horse, but he gets there and then walks right in, and you're like, wow, that was a dead on Western intro.
Now did you see Darth Maul, Sam Witwer?
I did not.
He makes a cameo. He is one of the town folk that is, as he's doing the slow roll, he is actually walking by. So yeah, Sam Witwer, voice of Darth Maul in Clone Wars and Rebels, makes a little cameo there. So yeah, no, I liked that moment too. It also kind of makes sense in the fact that, like, they talk about like the crate dragon sensing vibrations, and though he doesn't know that the crate dragon is going to be part of the storyline, but the fact that he does like a slow roll into town doesn't set off any like major vibrations that there's a large vehicle. I don't know. I don't take it what you will. He pulls into that cantina though, and unlike the cantina in A New Hope, it's basically just one person, which is the Weequay.
Yeah, the Weequay. And like, do you know who plays the Weequay?
I have it written down, but go ahead and tell me.
Is W. Earl Brown, who is actually a actor that played alongside the Marshal. I'm forgetting his name right now. Timothy Olyphant, who played with him in Deadwood. He was the right hand man of.
And it's cool that they not only did they put him in that for that character, but we also see in the backstory that they're buds. He saved his life. You know, so I liked that they actually had a bit of a connection there too. And I love the line where he's asking the Weequay, He says something like, "He looks like me."
Yeah, he looks like me. Yeah, it's like he looks at me like you could say you can see the wheels turning too, because it's like one of those like, well, what's he look like? He looks like me, and you're like, and you kind of like for a moment there, you kind of wanted to go like, is he thinking like, well, you're wearing armor, so I can't really see what you look like, or they go, oh, do you mean the marshal? Like, okay, yeah. Because I fully expected him to go either way with that, because that's probably what in my head would have been like, well, I can't see what you look like because you're covered up, But
and as the marshal walks in, and I pat myself on the back.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because I said, somebody wearing Boba Fett's armor that Star Wars fans would immediately be like, that's not Boba Fett. That's not Boba Fett. And if you look at the concept art for the episode, they actually like have the full Boba Fett. Like they just used the stand-in like full outfit. Like it wasn't like, oh, we're going to give the red scarf here. We're going to, and, I was talking with my brother because he's a big Boba Fett fan. And, for the entire first season, I was just like, come on, man. Like you got it. This is your jam, man. This is the Mandalorian. And I think he was just a little worried that they were just going to mess it up.
Right.
They were going to mess up something that he loved. Mm-hmm. And why not? Because Star Wars can do that to us sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah.
And, so he binged season 1 all the way straight through. Once the full season was out, he binged it and loved it. But then when this episode aired, he was kind of doing the same thing where he's like, I'll just wait. And I, after watching it, I just all cap lock texting him like, you have to watch this now. Because I was like, no, you're going to get spoiled on this. And this is what you've been waiting for, dude. Seeing the end result. Even just seeing the Boba Fett armor again would have been worth the ticket.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those moments where, I knew it was Boba Fett's armor immediately as soon as I saw it, but I was like, that's not Boba Fett, because you can see he's so slender, and the armor's too small for him, and you're just like, what the heck is this? But it was kind of relief, because like I had said in the last episode, I didn't really want to see something like that, where like just Boba Fett wanders in. Like I liked the way they approached this, and that it kind of, not to get ahead in the episode, but it kind of confirms the old stuff that like, is Boba Fett dead? Is he not Boba Fett? Did they just find his armor? Like, how did they get the armor? Like all these things. So you have a little bit of a mystery there of like what's going to go on. And if you were still suspicious of it, as soon as he pulls the helmet off and you see the dent in the helmet, you're like, now immediately.
Exactly. Oh yeah, no, the dented helmet. And I think the episode does a great job of setting up things that we can fill in the gaps for. The Jawas found that armor.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like once we get the story from him, it's like we can fill in the blanks. We don't have to like have it completely spelled out, but we also need a little bit of breadcrumbs just leading us there. But it doesn't have to be hammered over the head like, oh, dummies. Jawa, it's like now we're going to go into the backstory of the Jawas and how they found it in a dead Sarlacc pit that's been eaten.
Right.
Like all of those things can line up if you want them. So anyway, they're about to have this shootout because basically, and I like this whole interaction. Very classic Western, and I'm like, from the start, we're going to get a shootout.
Well, first I wanted to say, like, one of the first things he does, though, before they get to that, is he orders a Spotchka, which I thought was a nice little reference to season 1 of like, hey, here's this blue liquid that we were protecting in episode 3 or 4. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
4. And it's like, oh, that's a nice little throwback. Which doesn't beat you over the head. You either get it or you don't. It's like, oh, like here it is, like we're drinking Spotchka. But yeah, like this, you're right. This is a straight out of first. He takes the helmet off, and you immediately see like the pause in Mando, like, oh, something's not right here, which I get and I don't get, because as we've seen with Sabine takes her helmet off all the time. So I wonder maybe Mando really doesn't know anything besides Death Watch, and so like how is it when he actually does meet a proper Mandalorian and they take the helmet off? How is he going to react to this?
Yeah, I would like a little bit more of that. Again, don't have to beat me over the head of explaining why he's a religious fanatic about the helmet.
Yeah.
But yes, the helmet comes off and the guns are about to come out.
Yeah. And this is like what you said. This is actually straight from the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, right even down to the hand quiver. It's like, like we're gonna have until we get interrupted. But yeah, everything to this point of the standoff and like, this is my town. Stand up. All this. This is straight out of that scene Western. It's great.
The little baby Yoda thrown in there just for cute sake.
I did think it was cute. He's over hiding behind the spittoon. Like
we're gonna do this in front of the kid.
In front of the kid.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Second time we've had people kind of mention the kid or the child like being involved or around this. So I'm thinking also big picture for the season. Like, is this going to become a plot point that like ends up biting him in the rear as far as like the fact that Baby Yoda is put in jeopardy or he's taken away or maybe he kind of lets his guard. I don't know. Who knows?
It could be a very good plot point, but it could also, because I'm always thinking of the wolf and the cub, which is what a lot of this is drawn from. And a lot of those, there's definitely a couple of stories I know in book 1 where he uses that to his advantage, where people don't see him as a threat because he has a child. And like in the wolf and the cub, the what do they call him? The stroller that he pushes the kid around and is completely
I really wish that I knew the Japanese word.
Yeah. Well, like the entire underneath is lead lined, so like he just flips it over and then and then he can use it as protection. So it's like I can easily see the egg being the same way. Yeah. It's like something could happen where he's prepared for any situation like that, but yeah, you don't want anything to happen to baby Yoda at the same time. But
yeah, we didn't talk about this early on, but where did he get the second floating bassinet? Because the first one was destroyed in the shootout, I believe. Maybe he repurposed that one.
Well, if you look at,
I don't remember the controls being on the front.
Right. If you look at that one, I think it is in that opening scene. It's really damaged.
Yeah.
Like the paint's all scratched up on it. There's things hanging off of it, so it's definitely has seen better days.
Yeah.
So maybe he just found another one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to see Mando go into
Baby Yoda's or something. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so Cobb Vanth. We learned that that's who he is, and I wanted to just note that the chest armor isn't lit up in this scene, but it's not lit up
in one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird. It's like. I don't know why it's not lit up, and then later on it's lit up, and it's just kind of interesting, that little pocket.
I noticed that too. The pocket is lit up only in the scene where they're in the bar explaining to the townspeople. Then it's off again when they're out in the desert again. But it's just like the same way in like A New Hope with Vader's buttons. Like sometimes they're on, sometimes they're not. You're like, why are Vader's lights not on?
Yeah, I guess maybe they only like pop up when they have to like do a software update.
Right.
It's like updating the software. It's like looking for a Wi-Fi signal. Maybe that's what it is. It's like searching. So
yeah, because he's in the bar, they have Wi-Fi there, so it's that's what it's showing. It's showing the signal.
You've got reception now.
Yeah, exactly.
They basically are interrupted by the sandworm or the tremor, whichever sci-fi reference. I'm a big Dune fan, if you don't know. So, I liked it because I was like, oh, you got your Dune and my Star Wars. I'm cool with that. This is going to be Arrakis in a couple 100 millennia or something. So the sandworm breaks it up, and basically Vanth is kind of like, hey, let's make a deal, and the next thing we see them is they're basically flying off to ride to see the Great Dragon. Oh, did I miss something?
Well, no, I wanted to say a couple things.
Yeah.
One, my nitpick about this was like, he comes right down Main Street. So wouldn't there be like a tunnel now underneath Main Street? It would completely collapse after he left. It's like, but next time you see the town, the street's completely solid, and you're like,
you mean the sandworm that runs through it?
Right, because like he's naturally boring a hole underneath the street. So like that's just logically thinking like, wouldn't it collapse though after he left, or because there is going to be a hole underneath the main street now because he went through there.
Maybe we never see the backside of the Great Dragon. Maybe the backside
spills it back in.
It spills it back in. It's just like little legs that just kind of flip it back into place. It's like
okay.
You know?
Yeah. But that explains though, like why, like when you see him eat so much, like all the sand he's ingesting, why he has pearls inside of him, like
exactly.
like an oyster. You know,
exactly. No, that is exactly right. And you know, who knows if the people that made up the Great Dragon Pearl even thought of that.
Right.
You know, when they came up with that idea, but it totally works now.
But I wanted to, I didn't want you to skip over this too much because so we hear the sound it makes as it's coming into town.
Yes. And it's the old sound.
It's the old sound.
Original. It's not the, which is cool because it's like a little hook into the original version. So the despecialized version of A New Hope. So yes, that is the noise that Obi-Wan Kenobi makes.
So everyone that's out there listening, you know, the scene where, you know, Luke's been knocked out by the Sand People and you see Obi-Wan approaching and he makes the sound, like that's the sound that Obi-Wan was making is the Great Dragon sound to scare off the Sand People. So it's just one of those nice little plot hole fixes in a way. They're like, oh, that's what he's doing. Because I know me, like I always like, why does he make that sound? It doesn't make sense. Like, you know.
And I think in the updated specialized version, they tried to make it seem more apparent as to like, you know, but to me it always sounded like a car alarm going off. Especially the new version.
The new version
definitely has that more, you know, and you're like, you know, is Luke's land speeder alarm going off? Like, what's, you know, people are raiding it, so yeah, sure. I mean, he's probably got a sweet sound system, so he doesn't want to get that stolen. So yeah, no, I like that callback as well. I mean, again, this is all stuff that's already in the world. You know, they're just pulling it together.
Yeah,
including Anakin's pod.
Yes, I thought that was neat because you see Mando on the regular speeder bike, and all of a sudden you see another a pod racer engine pulling up, and you're like, oh, it didn't have the 3 towns; it only had 2.
That's right, and it's a different color. It's not the yellow; it's more of an orange color. But hey, you know, that happened so long ago. Who knows if that's been repurposed, re-spray painted? Do they even have spray paint?
Right. Yeah, who knows? I mean, it could be rust now. You know,
you're like, oh, that paint's not going to hold. It doesn't attach to metal. You need a specialized, you know, type of paint. So we see them ride off, right? And you know, all of a sudden, and this is my first nitpick. This was the first part where I'm watching it that I was actually kind of taken out of the show, and mainly because, again, I know Star Wars. Those pod racers are loud.
Right.
I also know motorcycles because they drive up my street all the time. There's no way you're having a heartfelt conversation on
True, right?
So after I'm trying to connect with you. I know it's minor. I love the flashback. I love the story. It, like, don't get me wrong. Like this, I like all things. But if I had to take a point off of the episode, it's like you could have just had that little heartfelt conversation right after you took off on speeders. Like just, you don't have to have the conversation as you're riding on motorcycles. You could just have it right there when you said, "Hey, maybe we can cut a deal." You know, after the Empire fell.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I mean, you could just go right into that story and then ride off on the speeders and understand like why all of a sudden the Mandalorian is deciding like, yeah, I'm going to help you. You know what I mean? Like why is he deciding to help him? He could just shoot him dead right there and go. You know, I think this goes to the other aspect of Din Djarin's character growth. And this, you know, I don't know how much time has passed between chapter 8 and chapter 9. But one thing that he's learned is entire season 1, he's like, I'm going to go it on my own. You know, he's like total White Snake, you know, here I go again on my own. And seriously, like, I mean, every time he could have gotten help, he's like, no, I got this, you know, like, unless it's Cara Dune. Until the end of the season, he actually rallies the troops together, and then, you know, he tries to you know, like get himself out of a jam. But here, not only do we see that he respects human life now, where he's not just going to shoot this guy dead, he recognizes that he has good character and he's going to help him out.
That was the one issue I had, in the scene earlier, and that he doesn't even really allow him to talk. It's just like, take it off, like give it to me. And I kind of felt that. I mean, I understood why, but it was like it kind of felt a little, what you're saying, like out of character for Mando at this point. I could have easily seen it in season 1. But
I think there's still this religious fanatic about himself, not taking off the helmet, disrespecting, like that's my culture or whatever, even though he's not born on Mandalore. Come on. Right. Mandalorians from Mandalore.
Well, I mean, I think just because I'm just such a reasoned person. I'm like, hey, like, did you want to hear my story first? And then I'll take it off. Like, buy me dinner before I take my clothes off, baby. Like, or whatever,
Well, and I guess that's just where I feel like that little bit of that story beat of like getting the backstory would have been cool if they just, it doesn't have to be on the bikes. Hey, you have the wind blowing and Timothy Oliphant's very, very sexy, great peppered hair, salt and pepper hair. Like the dude looks good. Okay. So,
he's a good looking man.
It's hard to compete. So, but anyway, that's my biggest nitpick there. They go off to basically find where the Krayt Dragon lives, and they run into.
We got more stuff to talk about here.
Oh yeah, go.
Yeah. Okay, so in the story though, like there's the things that I wrote down that I thought were interesting about it, because he talks about the power vacuum of when the Empire.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I forgot. I totally I was skipping over the backstory, which is like so cool.
Yeah, so like we've already mentioned, like you're seeing the Death Star 2 explode via the HoloNet, and and then all of a sudden the Mining Collective or the Red, what were they called?
Red Key, I think.
The Red Key, yeah, the Red Key, the Red something, Red Key, Red Kree Raiders, which is what they were called in the Aftermath book. So I think they kind of merged or just changed it a little bit, the name. Come in and basically, I thought this was interesting. He basically says that most Pelgo became a slave camp overnight. Mm-hmm. And it's just the fact that he called it a slave camp really made me think about because we already know slavery existed on Tatooine before the Empire and during the Republic. And what we can gather is during the Empire, with the Imperial presence there, that slavery at least was very minor, because you definitely saw it in Jabba's palace a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's like, but maybe everyone else was not, that was kind of done away with. So I thought that was interesting. So does slavery now, once again, is it on Tatooine again? We don't know. I think that's something interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely plays out the whole power vacuum and the fact that the Empire's gone, and, we can, for all of its badness, it's it did hold down law and order, and you have that removed, and what does a lawless universe look like, so, and clearly Tatooine is such a small planet that they have no governance.
Right.
Just
the huts. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, that's it. So I guess the huts retire there, like Florida,
Yeah.
It's or Arizona.
So, and then now this is something I noticed also when he's fleeing the cantina, and everyone's getting shot. He dives behind this speeder, and if you look on the speeder, there's a really crude drawing of Boba Fett on the speeder.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, it's just the helmet, but it is the Boba. And so I'm like, so I don't know why they chose to do that.
Yeah,
is it a weird connection to Boba Fett, or is it one of those Crimson Dawn type things, or where maybe he was running the crime syndicate on the planet? I mean, who knows? That's something we could get a little bit backstory on. I don't know. I mean, it could just be some random thing they threw in there.
Yeah. Huh.
And then, of course, he grabs the Cam Tono. Is that right?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. The ice cream maker is back.
Yeah, to get that in every season. Yeah. So
I love that they do that, because that was such a running joke for so long at Comic-Con. People walking around with those ice cream makers, and you either got it or you didn't. So now they have a purpose. And it was filled with a silly I never say Silicax.
I know. I was like, I wrote it down even too, but it's like, celiax crystals or whatever. So if you crush them up and snort it, man.
Wow. Yeah. And then
it is better than Suka.
Now, this is what I was saying to you before we hit record. There's an idiom that he says, that Cobb says, on this, when he talks about finding these crystals, he says, I guess every once in a while, both suns shine on a womp rat's tail. And this is such a Southern, for everyone out there, I'm from the South. This is such a Southern retelling of this, because it's a common expression of what we say, a sun shines on a dog's ass some days, which just means you had good luck,
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow, who wrote that line? I was like, because I'd never really heard someone say that. And I've said it a few times here. People are looking at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, it's just something we say, but I just thought that was an interesting line that he gave. I was like, oh, okay. But I guess it's just to show how kind of in the middle of nowhere Tatooine they are, all these.
Well, and he's never left Tatooine. He's always lived there.
Yeah.
So, real quick, I'm just going to actually pause this.
So
I'm going to mark it at 56:01, and I have to take a bathroom break. I apologize.
Sure. I'll be here. No worries.
So you were saying about the idiom though, and just this kind of colloquialism that Cobb Vanth has, and because he's lived on this planet for so long, and he's he clearly has some animosity to the Tusken Raiders.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you want to get there,
am I jumping over another thing? I jumped over the Jawa part. The fact that he
the Jawa part. Yeah, that's
sorry. I keep wanting to get to this scene where the Tuskens are talking to him. But okay, so the Jawa scene, which I kind of alluded to though, is the fact that the Jawas clearly picked up Boba Fett's armor somewhere in the desert along the way. I love the fact that they troll out all of their wares, and that turquoise R2 unit that was a pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's no R4 or R5D4 right there. That's some.
Well, they did say it was their best stuff. You had a gun and the astromech droid, and then he just kind of points over. I want the armor, which I don't blame him, because if it's true Beskar, then it would be worth quite a bit.
So, this one thing that I noticed, or I was looking at as I was rewatching this scene, because this was the other point of contention that you and I were kind of like, there's no rocket actually in the jetpack in that scene when it's in the Jawa. It's like in the crawler, the sand crawler there. By the way, I love the shot of the dark shadow coming over him, because you think something's going to be flying over top of him, but it's really just the sand crawler. But I love that imagery and how we're just so used to spaceships, and it's this crawler. So, and just that image of the small human man, in front of the giant tank, So, anyway, so he gets this armor, goes back to town, and basically scares the thugs away. With a rocket that we don't know where it comes from. Right.
I mean, I loved. Well, I didn't love it, but I thought it was interesting because it was another Western scene, like bartender, get out of here, And then
like a little shoot nod.
Yeah, then shoots everybody in there, and then I liked that it was a really nice use of Boba Fett's equipment that we've only seen in like video games or read about.
Exactly.
Because we actually see, the helmet. Visor come down automatically. We see through the lens of what it would be like to watch it, to him target it, and then fire the rocket. Because, the rocket has never been fired before other than like a video game or just in the toy that originally, supposedly came out. Yeah.
Yeah. But everybody wanted to fire.
Yeah.
So, like seeing that, so awesome.
It was great. Yeah. But this is so for everyone out there, this was just messaging back and forth between Matt and I. We kept kind of going like, where'd he get the rocket? Where did he get the second rocket? Where'd he get the second rocket? I was like, it's not like he can just go buy it at the local armory,
Tashi Station.
Yeah, Tashi Station. I was like, this is an outdated Mandalorian pack. I was like, he just like what the heck, But that's just me really nitpicking. Like,
I imagine that he, because we've all been there. You go to the hardware store and you get a part and you bring it back home and you're like, no, that's not the right one. I got to go back. And they're like, sorry, that's a special order item. It's going to take us like about 2 weeks to get that in.
Yeah.
Okay.
The current rockets are made in the metric system. This is in the old imperial system.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Like, your model's kind of out of date right now. All we have is this. Not sure it's going to work. You might have to remodify something. For whatever reason, he uses Amazon Prime and he gets some more.
One day delivery. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
I don't care how he got the rockets. It's cool. It's so awesome that we got to see it. And basically, he wins the hearts and minds of the town in that moment. So,
all right. So now we're at your scene, Matt. Take it away.
Finally, okay. We get to the key. Like they go off to like meet some Tusken Raiders, and we get this moment where they're sitting around the campfire, and again, a little bit more growth from the Mandalorian. The fact that he's being the peacekeeper. I like that he's the one it's like, hey, if you guys can't, work together on this, because they're clearly going to fight. I mean, it reminded me of actually Chapter 2 when he was just blowing up Jawas and like the Jawas and him are going to fight it out. And it's Quill. It's like, look, do you want your stuff back or not? Like, you got to talk to them. It's like, do you want this situation solved? You're gonna have to talk it out, and work through this. So
kind of like what you were saying earlier, this scene as well, like another one, just a few seconds. Like this is what really nailed or drove through that. They're the Native Americans, they're the Indians in this story because we're sitting around the campfire. Instead of having like a peace pipe, which would be stereotypical, they have this black drink thing that they open up, and
it looks like a spore.
It does look like a spore. I was like, oh my god, like is he like going to get infected with like an alien or something? But it is. It's very stereotypical in that like, do I have to drink this? He's like, if you want them to help you, yes. And so like that would be something also in a typical Western, But he doesn't drink it. He ends up insulting them and then throws it. They get all pissed, and so it's one of those typical situations again where it's like the one guy who's had a relationship with both sides, is the peacemaker.
Yeah.
And then we see this also once again, like this very typical, like when they explain to the villagers, they're savages. We don't want to mess with them. And then when later with the dynamite or the explosives, one drops it. It's like, whoa, what are you doing? It's like, like they're always looking at them as being beneath them,
Yeah.
And even at the very end, just because I'm trying to stay on the same tone.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Native Americans, you see that like, they say like, oh, we'll have a peace with you until you break it. So it's very much like one of those, like the white man is always, not saying that they're white people, but that's like, Western is like the white man's always going to break your word. We're not going to break our word. You will break it.
Well, I mean, we can only assume that the Tuskens have always lived on Tatooine and that everyone else is a foreigner to them.
Right.
Because we also know that like they know certain things about the Great Dragon because they've been there.
Right.
Like, these people don't know there's a pearl inside. So when they make this deal to say, like, yeah, sure, you can have the body. We don't want that body. What are you going to do with all that meat? Like, we don't have refrigerators. I don't know. I assume
Imagine you live forever off that thing.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, like, flash freeze.
You could salt it and smoke it, but still, that'd take forever.
Yeah, can you imagine the bonfire? I mean, there's not enough burnable things on Tatooine. It's like, it's not like you can get, like, twigs or wood or it's like, how do you we do see them making a fire, so what is that, just driftwood?
What are they burning? Yeah, I've never thought about that ever. It's like, what do you have to burn? Like, really?
Yeah.
All that sand, there'd probably be glass underneath it, after a while, like where you build the fire.
We did see, like, in episode 2 that the Tusken Raiders actually have like villages where they build their shacks out of some kind of twig kind of stick kind of thing. So they must. Can you imagine if that fire was just like, oh, we use bantha fur? Like how gross that would be to smell that burning. It's our special blend of dung.
That's what I'm saying. It's the bantha fodder. It's just like it's really high and
methane. Okay, so I really was like, I wanted to give my first takes, my first reactions to this. I didn't want to like go deep diving on the internet. I feel like, you can do that on your own. The listener, thanks for tuning in, but I'm not like reading other things. I just really didn't want my opinion or like even some of kind of my first initial reactions to be, influenced or even theories. However, because my brother, I've got him now hooked on this show, and he's just like calling me up. He's like, hey, and he sent me this YouTube link, which was interesting because it theorized that one of the Tusken Raiders is actually Boba Fett in that scene where they're by the fire. So now the video that I saw, they pointed to the earlier scene with the Mandalorian, and he's talking to the Tuskens just to find Mos Pelgo. They did not point to this scene where he's actually with Cobb Vanth and the Tusken Raiders, which is weird because there is one specific Tusken Raider, and I think this scene, shows it or demonstrates it a lot better. There's one Tusken Raider that's kind of standing to the side that actually, like, for a second, it looks like he's looking at Cobb Vanth, but he's not with the group. He's kind of like off to the side, and he looks over. As he's looking over, the next shot we have is on Cobb Vanth. So it's like, okay, was that Boba Fett disguised or basically living as a sand person, and is so anyway,
interesting.
Yeah. And again, this video pointed to a different sand person in an earlier scene. I feel like it's actually in this scene that you could actually make the case that Tusken, right before it cuts back to Cobb Vanth, while they're around the dung fire. So
I'll have to go back and watch it.
Yeah, I mean, just that scene, it kind of, you're like, oh, I guess I could see that, like that there is a little. So anyway, we've kind of talked a bit around this whole like deal that's worked out, because we're really building up to, well, I think we skipped over the first meeting of the Krayt Dragon, because there's two, essentially. We first see the Krayt Dragon when they go just to kind of see where it lives, and we see the Krayt Dragon, what we think is going to eat a bantha, but then ends up eating the sand person, which is great.
I actually liked that scene a lot, because I thought it was just going to be very straightforward, like, oh, they're going to bait it and it comes out and eat it, that's it. But then when it eats the sand person, I not only like that, I liked the reaction of the sand people up on the hill watching this, because it's like one of those moments like, oh crap, like you're like, they got Billy, it's like, I just loved that, because you could see them like going like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah, I think when I was watching with my kids, we were all like, why didn't he run sooner? Like, you call and then you run. Like,
right.
Have you ever not like, what is it? Like, you knock and you leave something on the door.
Knock, bitch. Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking of. I was like, no, you call and then you just run, man. You don't wait. But that's on him. By the way, why is this mining collective called the Red, but they all have blue masks? I don't know. Just like that mining crew that kind of takes over the whole thing. It's like they all have blue masks. They don't have red.
Right. So well, they weren't called Red in the show. They're just called the Mining Collective. But like in the book, they're the Red thing. So like that's what I was kind of wondering, like why they kind of retconned that. Like
I'm wondering now, like, so Aftermath and the Aftermath trilogy, they always have these like little interludes, which I enjoyed because they were snapshots of things around the galaxy as they were happening, told from different points of view. And I'm wondering if that's where he appeared or if he was a larger character in the book. I cannot remember, so I apologize, listeners. I blame Chris for not being here.
Right, because it was his time to shine. No,
and he also probably has played Knights of the Old Republic. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
That is not a game I'm familiar with.
It was like one of the best games ever, 2003.
What I heard. And apparently there's a whole mission where you have to get a Krayt Dragon Pearl, and they basically do it the same way that they kill this one. Yeah,
that's right. There's so many pearls or Easter eggs in this episode. I mean, I can get to that now, but that's actually what you do in that game. Is it's one mission where you're on Tatooine and you have to go kill a Krayt Dragon, and when you get the pearl, you're given options. that game was kind of beyond a first person game. It was, like you had options of where, everything you did chose if you're going to be on the good side or the bad side,
Mm-hmm.
And so when you got the pearl, you could either give it to the Sand People to forge an alliance for future things on the planet. You could help improve your lightsaber, or just trade it away for money, for credits. So that was like, just as like any other game back then. It's like, oh, like here's your reward. What are you going to do with it?
So when we say that it is used in lightsabers, I'm imagining that it's like, turquoise to Native Americans. Like it's just like a decorative kind of like inlay that's like, used on the handle hilt, or does it actually like have a special purpose?
No, so it's one of those things that the way I understand it is that inside the pearl, because like you remember the crate dragon's eating the sand, it's eating things in the ground, that sometimes in the pearls they would eat actual kyber crystals. Like that's the way it's explained. And so it's refined like throughout the pearl that you have kyber crystals in there. So it would be a more specialized blade.
Huh. Okay. So it would be used in the blade making.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking in terms of like, hey man, you want to see my cool crate dragon like
pearl handle?
It's like,
I mean, other than Mace Windu, who would have that? I could see Windu having the pearl handle.
This cool medallion that I got when I was on Tatooine at a thrift shop. So it's got crate dragon pearl, man. It's real crate dragon pearl. Sorry. Okay, so I'm skipping around because we're kind of leading up to the main event, right? Like where they like, we talked about like how they go to the townspeople. They're like, hey, let's do this, and we even see it like, are you stupid? You're gonna blow us up. Which I saw that was also could be a slight reference to Jaws, and the fact that there's
right.
He like drops those canisters.
Yeah.
That's also the thing that ends up actually blowing up Jaws and like killing Jaws. So, is that those little canisters that they end up putting on the bantha. So this whole, I love the little maquette or like the little makeup that they do, the little model of like, oh, this is like the bones and these little pebbles are us. Like that's too big. That's not to scale. It's like, oh no, it's to scale. Yeah. You saw it at one point. Like, would you think?
He's seen it twice, at least.
Yeah.
You're like, did you not have eyes? The thing is huge.
Yeah. We also get, the mention that that it lives in an old sarlacc.
Yeah.
Pit basically, or an old sarlacc. And he said, I've never seen any, an empty sarlacc pit before.
Right.
And we get this allusion to like, unless something else eats it.
Yeah.
So, which makes, again, if we connect the breadcrumbs here, perhaps this is also how Boba Fett got out.
I mean, yeah, it's a good reasoning behind it. We don't know, but we assume that the crate dragon ate, the sarlacc. I mean, I know in the comic book that Boba Fett makes a connection with someone that was eaten like a long prior, and like he gets the rocket, I think, to detonate, and which allows like a bubble to happen, and he can get out from there, and that's how he escapes it in the comic, which is no longer canon, of course, but we could see that. I mean, we could easily find out whenever episode, which could be the next episode where he actually talks to Boba Fett, how he gets out.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about he could be knocked unconscious. He could be laying there in the desert with like this armored plating. Like that's how he would survive, basically, like eaten by that acid is the Mandalorian armor. So I guess just that idea that perhaps that's how he survived. Maybe the Jawas come across him. He's passed out in the desert. The Jawas strip it. He's just laying there, and maybe. Who knows where we go from there if we'll get more of that backstory. From what I know, Boba Fett's not really a talking kind of character.
Yeah, for real. He's no good to me dead. Now, the acid that you brought up, that was one of the things that really kind of irked me just a little bit. Because, like, you see when the Crate Dragon shows up, and the detonation really didn't work, you see all this acid he vomits up. And it's like basically like Alien. The acid just completely disintegrates anything it touches. And then he's not covered from head to toe completely in Beskar. So it's like, how did that really work?
So my only understanding is that, okay, the Krayt Dragon spits the acid, much like in the dragon would spit fire.
Right.
But it's not lining his innards like a Sarlacc.
Yeah.
But you're right. It would disintegrate cloth. And he's swallowed, so he's got to be in like some kind of stomach acid for at least a second. It's Star Wars, man.
It's Star Wars. You just got to believe it.
Okay, so the action sequence, though, that takes place, and I love that we get the second rocket.
Yep.
Maybe there's a magazine. Maybe he bought a deal on Amazon.
Sears.
You buy 6, or maybe that canister, it's like there's one and then there's one right behind it.
Now, let's just say that would have been a cool call out too. I mean, it might have been a bit beating you over the head, but what if he would have done that? Like, what if at that point, at some point before they get to the battle, somebody says like, "Oh, where'd you get that rocket?" He's like, "Oh, I got from Tashi Station." or something like, like, "Oh, I went and picked it up," because you get power converters. I can get some rockets there too. Cool, why not? Like,
I traded for it at Tashi.
Yeah. Oh, then Tashi. Yeah. Oh, cool. All right, gotcha. Cleared it up right there.
But I love that shot. I mean, and he uses it in such a cool way because it hits the eye, and I kept waiting for a moment of like where they like striked at something that was weak, and they clearly were trying to get to the belly, which didn't work. And I think everybody kind of knew, like, okay, whatever the plan's going to be, it's going to backfire.
Well, that was something that, because how many other movies have we seen? Like, I know there's another Dragon movie where they did that with Matthew McConaughey, Rain of Fire. And there's a couple of other things where you've seen, like even Tremors. It's like, you've seen how big the mouth is of this creature. It's like, why didn't you just fire a rocket down its mouth? When it has its mouth open, that would make way more sense than like, oh, let's just put out these mines underneath it, and the chance it might kill it from underneath. Like, I was like, okay, but I
mean, think about our mouth. It's like if you shoot something in, it's just going to go to the back of our throat. It's not going to go to our belly.
So we're not a worm.
True.
Now that's another thing too about Krayt Dragon. Every time I've seen a Krayt Dragon up until now, it's had legs.
Mm-hmm.
So this one didn't have legs though. So that was another kind of retcon thing they did as well. Oh, we didn't even talk about that, like how this is also the Krayt Dragon was also another throwback to A New Hope, with the bones being there in the dude scene.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and they throw bantha bones in one of the scenes, which is cool because that's another callback. You see the bantha skeleton just kind of sitting there in the desert. So, so the a couple other cool moments, I guess, from that whole sequence, that whole action sequence, though, is them flying up together.
Mm-hmm.
It's like such a buddy moment. Like, hey, you got a rocket? I got a rocket. Let's go. Let's get higher. This guy, But I also liked how they continued to show that the creature would be going inside that mountain, like climbing up, and like erupting out, like, just the choreography of that.
I kind of thought it was weird because, I mean, who am I to know anything about what a Krayt Dragon can and cannot do? But up until that point, we'd always seen it come out of sand. Something that's fairly easy to get through. Right. But when it comes out of the mountain, which is rock, I was like, whoa, how did it do that? I mean, it was just one of those kind of like a little bit of didn't believe it. It was like, dude, you just knocked the roof off your house, man. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, hard to say.
Hard to say.
So, go ahead.
Don't forget about the other cool scene with when they're back on the ground. With because he fires the rocket, and then he's like, okay, take care of the child, And then we get a Return of the Jedi moment where he just hits the jetpack the same way Han does on the back, and then it launches him up almost kind of in the same kind of like, what the? And then takes off. I mean, it was neat. A little how the Boba Fett's jetpack's got a faulty.
I think it's just part of the Fett legacy. Django, had the same faulty rocket kind of backpack. So it's just like.
Maybe it's just the way they're made. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. We haven't seen that with Mando's yet because his new. It's got like a 2-year warranty. Mm-hmm. So like after 2 years, it's like it's going to have its own little bugs. You
do kind of wonder what the difference is because Mando's does not have a rocket on it. It's just it's got the same kind of design, but it just has like more of a flat piece on there. So you're like, well, is his just made for flight and that's it?
I think so. I mean, he needs to meet with the armorer again to get the upgrade. So I'm surprised we didn't get I need to get one of those moments, as he sees the rocket fire. All right. So we see this big battle go down. And I was kind of like, he's so quick to be like, take care of the child. I'm going to go die.
Yeah, for real.
I'm going to die for a cause that you are part of, I'm fine with it. No nitpicks here, but maybe Cobb Vanth is the one that steps up and says like, hey, I've got this. This is my town, and maybe he's the one that kind of steps up and makes that sacrifice. But
that would be cool.
It's Mando's show, so he's got the cool, stun, fork kind of thing.
Actually, now that I'm thinking, I would have probably liked that if like they would have been discussing that after he fired the rocket, and it's like, what do we do? It's like, and then like Amanda said, we've got to get inside, and then said like, all right, I'm going to do it, and then Cobb just grabbed his arm, was like, I've got it, And then,
exactly.
I think that would have been a cool,
like he owns, he kind of owns up to like, because I mean, it's really his goal, it's his purpose,
right.
Like this whole. But Mando earns it.
Yeah,
doesn't get his pants. They don't disintegrate with the acid.
Good.
That would have been really disturbing for a Disney Plus show. He flies out. He's like kind of stark naked.
Yeah,
on the bottom.
Just the armor. His butt's just hanging out. It's just
everything else, nude body showing through. It's just like what?
It's like he's wearing chaps.
Yeah, exactly.
he lands and all we see is the backside of him. You're like, didn't you see that?
Close your eyes, Baby Yoda.
He puts his hand up. He's like blocking his eyes. Like,
Yeah. Okay, so everything's saved. All things are good in the world. Nothing could possibly go wrong again. And then we get the Boba Fett shot. So
yeah, it was really cool. I mean, he surrenders the armor, and then Mando's riding off on the speeder bike, and then we see at least the actor, Tamara. I never say his first name right.
I know
Tamara Morrison. And of course, part of me is thinking, is it Boba Fett?
It's Boba Fett.
Yeah, but then I'm like, it makes sense. It's got to be Boba Fett because if it was a clone trooper or Rex, he would look a lot older. So I was like, it's got to be Boba Fett.
I mean, age aside, we know that Rex has got the beard. He's got the cool, white goatee beard. And also, he's got no eyebrows.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you see him, and he's clearly has some scar tissue on. I mean, they did a great job of, even though it's in the dark light, they clearly put on some makeup to give him some look of scarring, which would make sense. It's like if you're in a Sarlacc pit, you're going to have some acid burns, So, or if he was in the side of the crate dragon.
Oh yeah,
so,
true.
However he got out, he's got some scar tissues, and this goes to I guess that fan theory that I was kind of mentioning about like, is he or was he one of the Tusken Raiders?
Mm-hmm.
Like, has he been? Why would he go out like in the middle of this desert and just be like, oh, what are they working on? Cool. Like it makes more sense that he would have been with them or shadowing them. Maybe he doesn't know who he is.
He might not, or he gave up that part of his life,
Yeah.
or maybe the Tusken Raiders saved him, maybe.
Right. I mean, that's another thing. Like that's
like what you're saying. Like, what if he got out? The Jawas strip him, and he's basically naked out in the desert, and the Raiders find him, and then they basically embrace him as one of their own, and he's been living that lifestyle ever since.
And until he saw that armor, he didn't know.
Yeah. Or maybe he might not even want it back. I mean, who knows? Like, we assume this is what's going to bring him and Mando together. But maybe he just really is just going to help him. Like, and just be like, hey, like that. I used to be this, but I know how to find, Sabine. I know how to find, someone else. It just points him in the right way. But
I thought that this might actually, the way that this went down. This episode, I thought that this really sets up how he can find Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Which is the fact that he's going around asking, hey, have you seen any other Mandalorians? Oh, yeah, there's this Mandalorian that I saw on blah, blah, blah. And he goes and he finds Sabine, and oh, by the way, Sabine knows Ahsoka, and they're together. I just felt like it kind of sets up a little bit more of this because, there's 7 more episodes to go. And, last season, we definitely got those standalone episodes. This is a standalone episode that doesn't really move the story along that much. All we know is that he got some new Boba Fett armor. And we don't see him leave Tatooine.
No.
So,
I don't think he will, yeah.
I mean, maybe, does the next episode start with him leaving Tatooine, or does it start off like he's just in space on another adventure? We didn't really see him like peace out. It brings up questions though as to how Boba Fett will track down the Mandalorian, follow him, find him, and I mean these are all kind of like hypotheticals at this point because we're now kind of at the end of the episode where we're just saying like what next,
That's a good question. I mean, like, who knows? Like, he could get back, at the very beginning of the next episode and something's wrong with the ship, or maybe doesn't have enough money to pay her,
No, you got that meat, man.
You got the meat, but, maybe it's not enough. Maybe he's like, no, I wanted 2, or...
Yeah.
The one question I did have, though, because that was something I had theorized about and we talked about, was at the end of episode 5 of the first season, after Fennec Sand, the bounty hunter who gets killed.
Oh yeah.
At the very end of that scene, we see someone walk up to the body, and all we see is black boots and hear spurs, which a lot of people thought, oh, is it Boba Fett? Because Boba Fett wore spurs, and so I mean, now it does give it some truth in that, and that it could have been him. Just curious,
or was it Cobb Vanth?
Or it could have been Cobb Vanth. You don't know.
Because we also hear the spurs when he rolls up.
True.
So, I mean, it's easy enough to be like, okay, that was Cobb Vanth, but now we actually see Boba Fett. So, and again, who knows when we'll see Boba Fett again? I mean, the show has been pretty good at like peppering out a lot of the characters, and I could easily, see them doing something where, he's just being trailed by him, I mean, whatever Boba Fett's story is, and I feel like they have to almost keep it at arm's length, is that because, you don't want it to be the Boba Fett show.
No.
And, but he does create a great foil. But Boba Fett's always been a character that works for himself as a mercenary. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's given up that life.
Right.
Maybe he doesn't want a bounty anymore.
And I think we've kind of hinted at that already. I think that's the way to go with it, because I don't want to see like a Mando and Boba Fett team up. Really, I'd much rather him say like, "Oh, I turned over a new leaf," or something, and like, "This is the life I lead now," or whatever, and just kind of give him aid, but not,
I'm still on board with episode 8 of the season. It is Boba Fett wearing the Mandalorian armor. in
I
a
mean, that's
shootout.
fine. That's fine. Oh, the shootout.
I like that. I want to see that. I mean, we got a tease to it basically at the beginning of this episode. You know, how it's a Western. How cool would it be to have who we now love as the Mandalorian? You don't get. I know.
Well, it's just because like I think there's too many people that like the mystery of Boba Fett and they like the character of Boba Fett. And I think to only have him in like say 2 or 3 episodes, like I said, because you don't want it to be the Boba Fett show, but to have a shootout with him, and let's say he's in this episode, let's say he's in the next episode, and then episode 8, to kill off not a major, but to kill off a side character like that who's had such a long history and a legend, I think would really disappoint a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't think you can kill him off. Not after like you just brought him back. It's kind of like how I think I talked about. You cannot introduce Ahsoka in one episode, have this be the first time we see a live action Ahsoka, and oh, by the way, she dies.
Right.
You know, like it's no, that's not how you world build and create like a great tapestry. You know, it's like you can kill her off in season 6 of her own show. Anyway. All right. We could continue. Is there any other last thoughts that you have about it? Because I mean, we're almost at an hour and a half here. And I really do. There's so much I feel like in this episode. And I know you have some other maybe notes. No.
Oh, I mean, not about the show.
Okay. All right.
I think we've covered it pretty well. But looking forward to next week. It could go anywhere.
I know, and like I said, I mean, he hasn't left Tatooine yet. Are they just going to say, "Oh, he just magically left"? Are we going to get at least a little bit of a connection? Like it starts off on Tatooine, where's Slave One? Is it parked on? I mean, you got to figure if Boba Fett's out of the commission, like some other bounty hunter came through and like stole that.
Yeah, because most likely it was parked at Jabba's palace, and then it's been 7 years? It's gone.
It's got that crate dragon alarm system.
Right. Yeah, right. It does. But it's like one of those things, like one of those big plot holes in Empire Strikes Back. Like Luke flies to Cloud City in the X-wing. He doesn't leave on the X-wing, but yet he has it in Return of the Jedi. You're like, well, how'd you get your plane back? Okay, whatever.
I have a little bit of fan fiction that I kind of was working on a story. I think we may have talked about it either on air or off air, of a story in between Empire and Jedi, where they actually did this in the current Marvel run of Star Wars, the most recent run. I had kind of penned it in my own mind of how it could go down, but I wanted. I like the idea of having a Lando Luke team up. I always liked that aspect and how unique that would be, to see a post Empire like them going to Cloud City to find Luke's lightsaber, going down into the trash, area with Ugnaughts, and like you see them kind of like searching for this lightsaber, and then also, oh, by the way, stumbling into some of the Emperor's Royal Guard doing the same thing. And you could have a whole chase, a whole fight, a whole like exit where they're trying to get out of there.
Do they find the hand as well? Still like attached to it?
Well, they don't find it. They don't find it. So, but because they run into Imperial guards that they're kind of chased off, they get separated because they're on a twin cloud car that's like split. It kind of explodes, and then one pod goes down. And we actually
would both go down because the engine is in the center.
It is in the center, but Lando somehow is able to like crash land it back onto Bespin.
Oh, okay.
However, Luke crashes on a floating rock island in the space nebula of the clouds deep, deep below, So you kind of see this rocky island floating kind of in the clouds, where he finds a green kyber crystal. That becomes the basically the kyber crystal he'll use. So that was the story that I was loosely writing. I wanted him to find a crazy hermit that would also kind of challenge him and try to kill him. So, yeah, that's maybe Lando's the one that comes back and rescues Luke. But that's as far as I got with that story. And the Marvel version you can read. It's okay.
Yeah.
So
do you want me to give a book review of Dooku Jedi Lost, or you want to say it for that time?
Yeah. Let's do that. We can continue this podcast. So
Okay.
I know that you had picked it up. I was curious about this book because I know it came out on audio form and audio form.
What I did was I had purchased the audio book maybe 2-3 months ago, and I just hadn't got around to listening to it. But I'm someone that likes to listen as well as read.
Oh, okay.
And so I saw the book at Target for sale for like $8. And I was like,
nice.
Got to get that. I'd been meaning to buy it anyway. So I got it, read it in 3 days. I was extremely impressed with it because it's not written like a traditional novel. It's written more like a play, or because it has, scene one and then sets up what it looks like, and then you just have the dialogue, and that's it. Like none of the, like he breathed heavily, it's all just, like sets it up and then you read the dialogue. And then, but it's very good, especially if you're interested in Dooku and the early Dooku. And I felt that there could be another book in there somewhere. I don't know how they would actually do it, but because basically it's told through the eyes of Ventress, who is Dooku's assassin / Padawan / Sith apprentice, whatever you want to call her. And it's right after she first becomes his apprentice. And he sends her on this mission to save his sister, or at least to find her. And while she's doing this, he gives her like this whole things of holocrons. And each of them are different phases in his life, from like early childhood training as an initiate to a Padawan, to a Jedi Knight, to him being a Jedi Master. So you see his whole life as a Jedi. And, you have Qui-Gon in there being a Padawan. You have his first Padawan. You have like all these different little stories that really kind of clue you into how Dooku thinks, which I thought was really interesting. Of course, the whole time you have Ventress going like, that's not the master I know, because, like all he does is electrocute her all the time. But I really enjoyed it. And there's only one mentioned, because at this point she does not know who the Emperor is or who Palpatine is. And there's only one mention of a dark robed person. And, there's a lot of Sifo Dyas in there as well, because they were best friends. Oh, yeah. And so that's where I think if they make another one, that's where it should go. It should go into like how Dooku came under Sidious's, how they became acquaintances, and that point too, where Sifo Dyas and Dooku were still close, even though he's not the Jedi Order, but how the whole clone creation and the betrayal and all that happens, and how Sifo Dyas doesn't really die, but how he disappears. I think that's where, if they're making another book, where it should go. But I really did enjoy it. It's a quick read. Like I said, it took me 3 days, really I think I read maybe 2-3 hours a day. So, I got through it pretty quick. Because it is, even though it's 400 pages, it's like I said, it's written more like a screenplay, so it's not like a full page crammed, It's just like a line, Yeah. No,
that's cool. I know that the audiobook was touted as kind of like more of a theatrical thing. Like it
is
different,
yes. There's lots of voice actors, doing it all. And it does. And that's what I'm saying. I liked listening to it as well as going along with the pages, because that way you understand, like if you quite can't understand what they're saying, because you have a lot of alien voices and Yoda voices and things. You're like, sure. I'm not sure exactly what they said, but if I can read, I'm like, oh, got it. Yeah.
They said that the sun doesn't shine on the Womp Rat's tail.
Two suns.
Two
suns shine on us. Womp's rat. Yeah, no, it was a mouthful. I'm sure he probably had to do it in a few takes.
Yeah. Well, no, that's cool. I was definitely curious about that book. I know, even though Darth Plagueis is no longer canon, that's a really great book in the fact that and I would say like the first 3/4 is a lot more about Palpatine and his master, and the last quarter is basically like, and this is how it connects to the Phantom Menace. And like you see the events of Phantom Menace play out, and like how he was basically, had Darth Maul, while he was also talking to Count Dooku. So I could see them kind of going back in and like fixing some of those things or adjusting some of those things. But that would be the other thing that I would, if they're going to make it canon, if they're not going to make it canon, but it would be one way of maybe retconning or pulling in the Rise of Skywalker and the whole idea of Exegol, and you could actually like go a little bit more into like the lore, the history of that. Cause one of the things that was fun about Rebels when it was airing was that they would always, as soon as one of the new movies came out, it was just like, as soon as Rogue One came out, it's like, boom, all of a sudden we got Death Troopers everywhere. Cool. Which dates it in some ways, but, in other ways, it helps fill out things. It's like, as soon as we got the cross guard, it's like, boom, you see an episode in which, he's picking up a cross guard, but it's green. I think it's Ezra, in the one of the Sith temples. He picks up a lightsaber that's got the green cross guard. So,
yeah, I can't remember. I know I wrote it down somewhere about within the Dooku, like there's a mention of another Darth in it, and like very briefly, but I remember like, cause like I that's what I've wanted for a long time. That's one of the things I was disappointed with the sequel trilogy, because I always wanted it to be Darth Plagueis, not the Emperor again. Because I think it would have been a nice bookend to bookend if you would have seen this like Plagueis's master. Like, let's say that the Sith had died out for the millennium, like the Rule 2 still stood, but they really had lost touch with the dark side, like not totally, but they weren't as powerful as, and then they started discovering these Sith relics, which started to infuse them again and like learning knowledge. And that's why Plagueis was called Darth Plagueis the Wise, because his mission, he felt, was to gather knowledge about the Sith. And he was teaching Sidious all these things, but then, of course, Sidious, being Sidious, got too confident and wanted the power for himself. And so he felt, he thought he killed Plagueis, but Plagueis never really died. And so Plagueis just let Sidious do his own thing, saying, all right, fine, you go do my dirty work while I continue to gain knowledge.
No, I mean, it would have been really cool to pull in Plagueis at the end, especially if you had Exegol full of these Sith artifacts.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Sith artifacts, like, and this is where I've always kind of felt like you can't really have a Sith ghost. If you do, it has to be connected to an object.
Right.
So, like Darth Vader's mask, where you have kind of like this dark side that Kylo's communicating with, or in the comics, which there's a Lando comic of all things that is really cool, because he basically steals the Emperor's ship, and there's an artifact on there that's possessed by a Sith. I think that's how it goes down, if I'm remembered correctly. But there's some dark side elements that come through in a Lando book where you're like not expecting that to occur. So
that's one of the interesting things I felt in the Dooku book, is that when he is still a youngling, before he actually gets chosen by a master to be a Padawan, he wants this. I forget what her last name is, but it's like he just calls her Lynn. I think Lynn, and she is kind of a Sith artifact hunter, is what she likes. That's what she's obsessed with.
Sith Lord?
No, yeah, but she likes to comb the galaxy for these artifacts, and like there's a whole. It's very, like I said, it's kind of like Harry Potter in a way, in that they're him and Sifo Dyas, when they're young, discover this room that's just full of Sith artifacts. And so that's what I'm saying. That there's a lot of potential there for tie-ins of what we were talking about. And
I mean, even Dr. Aphra, Dr. Aphra comic. I mean, she is basically she's Han Solo. She's a female Han Solo. Well, no, sorry, a female Indiana Jones / Han Solo, because she is an archaeologist that is like always finding these artifacts. And there's some really cool ways that they tie in Jedi lore and, Sith lore into all of her stories. So, and if you're really interested in a great character that the new Marvel has made out of Star Wars, the Dr. Aphra comics are a lot of fun. They're funny. Like there's some actually, like, I would say the first run.
Didn't they introduce Dr. Aphra in Rebels?
They introduced her in Darth Vader.
That's it. In a comic, yeah. I knew I had seen her somewhere else. So like,
she's introduced in, I think, the first Darth Vader volume that Marvel has done, and then she gets her own storyline. And you can read the Dr. Aphra comic without having to read the Darth Vader one. But there's some very, very funny writing, like just like the dialogue and that happens within those stories is very witty. And it's also a very unique character in the fact that, and I think that, I don't know, just like all of the different things, like she's really out for herself. She's super selfish. She is an anti-hero through and through. So like there's moments where you're like, I like you, but I hate you.
Right.
So anyway, this show's gone on long enough. We'll be back next week with Chapter 2. No, sorry. Scratch that. Chapter 10. I'm thinking of like season 2, chapter 2, but season 2, episode 2, we'll be back 2 and 2. If you have any feedback, we'd love to read it on the air, give you our thoughts. Send us an email to theforceiswelldone@gmail.com. You can rate and review us on iTunes. We'd always appreciate that because there's a lot of Star Wars podcasts out there, but the more you click 5 stars and give us some feedback, that helps people recognize that we are a unique Star Wars show, and the fact that we don't really have Star Wars in our podcast name. We are
true. We're just owner Bruce.
You can become a patron. Go over to jayandjack.com, click on the patron link, become a patron at the smallest level to the largest level. You can listen to Nick and I on the RCAD podcast. It's also on the Jay and Jack Network, where we talk about all things, and we are more explicit. At this point, I'd like to thank a few patrons that make this show possible. And as always, they are Star Wars themed. I tried to relate it back to this episode, so stick with me. We have Tatooine, Moss Eckhart, Boba Ed, Marshall Maggie, Bantha Plan Joanne, and Crate Gregan.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good ones.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for helping out the show. We appreciate you. And this was a great show, right?
It was. It was a good one. But it's very rare that we go almost 2 hours.
It is. It's a treat for you and me. But we love talking Star Wars, and we'll probably get off of this podcast and still talk Star Wars. So
no doubt.